Welcome to Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. I'm Kevin Parkerson.
And I'm Kevin Higgins. Together we bring you over 60 years in combined experience in global logistics.
In each episode, we'll dive into the latest industry trends, share practical tips, celebrate wins, and share stories from the logistics front lines, all while helping businesses optimize their logistics operations. Today on Kev Talks Real World Global Logistics, we're honored to welcome a true industry trailblazer, Barbara Melvin, President and CEO of South Carolina Ports. Barbara made history as the first woman to lead a top 10 U.S. container port, and she brings nearly 3 decades of experience at South Carolina Ports, where she's led transformational projects like the Charleston Harbor deepening and the expansion of inland port operations.
With a background in government relations, an MBA in global supply chain, and a leadership style rooted in collaboration, innovation, and community impact, Barbara's not just moving cargo, she's shaping the future of maritime logistics. We're thrilled to have her on the show to talk about her journey, the evolving role of ports, and what's next for global supply chains. Barbara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Kevin and Kevin.
We're really excited to have you here, Barbara. We appreciate you coming on. But I need to start it with, I definitely want you to tell, our listeners, the audience, about your career and how you got started. But let's maybe kick it off with a little bit of let's say you walk into your favorite Charleston coffee shop and someone asks you, so what do you do? How do you explain your job to someone who's never heard the term supply chain?
That's such a great way to start. It's interesting you said we're in a coffee shop. So I typically try to relate to people by saying we don't grow coffee beans in the U.S. So what I do is make sure you have your cup of coffee every morning. I get to work with a team of people that are so efficient and so productive in what they do that's why you're never in line longer than you need to be for that cup of coffee. And that coffee shop is open every morning religiously when you're waking up.
Wow. That's a great answer. I love that. That's so relatable though, right?
It's one of the best answers we've gotten so far.
To our listeners that have nothing, really don't know much about supply chain. That really kind of puts it into perspective of exactly what your role and responsibilities are. So that's awesome.
Yeah, everything else is pretty boring. They can't see what's in the container.
It is not boring right now, that's for sure.
Yeah, they can't see what's in the container. They don't really know anything about what the truck driver is doing when he's on the road. But man, if they're in a coffee shop, you've got them.
That's exactly right.
That's a great analogy. I love that. I may steal that. I always use the restaurant analogy. That's how I would explain logistics to my daughter and to my family is that restaurant experience that you have.
Absolutely. Got to turn the tables every night, just like we got to turn the terminals.
Exactly.
Oh, there you go. All right. So Barbara, let's do share a little bit about kind of your journey, your early career, I would say, in government relations and policy, and then how you got into, running the South Carolina port.
So ironically, I think most people in our industry come from within the industry, especially a port director. It's become a job that evolves from the ocean carrier industry if you look around the United States. And I had zero background in ports. I was from a landlocked small city in Georgia, which too is ironic that the last port director here was from Georgia. Yeah. I am as well. So that was just a happenstance. But I didn't know anything about ports, but when I moved to South Carolina, I had the opportunity to be the lobbyist for the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce. And we worked very closely with the South Carolina Ports Authority from that perspective. And I got to watch for a couple of years what happened at the port. And I had the most wonderful unexpected phone call from 2 ago port directors who said, Barbara, we have been looking for an in-house lobbyist at the port for a long time, and we kept waiting for you to apply for the job. So this will tell you how old I am. It was advertised in the classifieds.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I was very early in my career and couldn't afford the newspaper at the time. Plus, I wasn't looking for a job. So I said, well, I had no idea that you were looking for this person. So I went over immediately and interviewed. And I wanted to take the job right then, but my dad had always told me wait till the next morning. And I think I woke up that port director at about 6:30 the next morning and said, I sure
wow.
would be honored to have this job. So that was 27 plus years ago now that happened. And I was able to parlay the government relations experience that I had all the way up through operations and then to the CEO role about 3 years ago now.
That's great. That's great. So how did your
Wow.
background influence kind of your approach to port operations and just overall leadership then?
Dealing in government relations teaches you on a daily basis how to think more strategically than tactically. So, I don't need to know how to operate a crane. I have wonderful professionals who do that on a daily basis. And if I'm trying to operate a crane, I'm in the way. So from a leadership perspective, I think that the collaboration that is required in government relations helped me to understand, do what you do best and let your team have the air cover to always do what they do best. And this team here at the South Carolina port, whether that's our employees or the maritime community that supports what we do, have always prided themselves in being the pros of productivity. And I think, my role is to make sure they have the resources and the support that they need to continue that reputation. And I think it's what we're known for in the industry. And I do what I do every day, just not mess that up.
Yeah. What do you think would surprise our audience to hear something about your day-to-day life as a port CEO? What would
Oh my
surprise you?
goodness. Well, it's, since this is an industry podcast, there's probably not much that could shock the industry
Touche,
right now.
right? Yeah.
But in general, about me personally, let's just say my day starts at 3:30 because I have to get my exercise in before I come in. Otherwise,
You're
I'd
one of those,
probably be
really?
somebody that nobody could deal with around here. So I guess from just a personal perspective, since I've got nothing to tell you that would shock our industry anymore, it would be that I'm up at 3:30 exercising every morning. Most people who know that take full advantage because they know they can get me on the phone that time of day versus normal working hours. So now your folks will know that too.
So what time do you go to bed then? If you're up at
Oh,
3:30?
I am asleep, usually sound asleep by 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Good
So
for
I
you.
get my
Wow.
hours. No
Okay.
worries.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So
get
we
my
know the
hours.
window of time when to find Barbara and when
Yes,
to call.
and believe me, that'll be the only time you're ignored is if I am sleeping.
And should be, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, listen,
Barbara, I want to go back real quick. One of the things you said you're talking about your leadership style and how that came from government relations. You may not know how to operate a crane. You may not operate a crane, but I bet you know the impact of every move of that crane and everything that happens on the terminal and the value that everybody on terminal and outside of terminal provides to your port operations.
Absolutely. If a port can't explain their return on investment to their stakeholders, then they're not doing their job. And for us here in South Carolina, we generate 1 in 9 jobs in the state of South Carolina.
Wow.
Greater than $87 billion of economic impact. So, when you're talking about the regions of our state that benefit from port activity, all regions of our state, all counties of our state. So we make sure that we're relatable to those stakeholders and they understand that an investment in the port generates, 1,000 times greater than that $1 investment from an infrastructure perspective. And, it's, you can't hide what we do. We take up valuable waterfront property. We have ships in the harbor in and around our recreational boats. We have trucks on the road that are in and around our personal vehicles. We have trains that may or may not be stopped on a road, impeding progress of a passenger vehicle. So you can't hide what we do, but you have to be able to generate pride in every person that's in and around you and that are your neighbors, so that they too feel like this is their port. And I feel like South Carolina, and I'm grateful to be a part of it, does appreciate port activity, and not just for what it does for our state, but for our region, because not every state gets to be on the water. And then truly the Southeast. The Southeast in the United States is a very formidable gateway as compared to other regions of the country. And we've got to keep our game up, because we're the place where population is growing. We're the place
Yep.
where we're still manufacturing things and growing things. So, we've got to be at the top of our game every day and realize when we come to work and operate safely and productively that, we are really positively impacting beyond the borders of our state. And I think it's important for us to all take that burden on our shoulders and do it with pride.
Yeah, yeah. So Barbara, you
I
mentioned,
love that.
being, at the top of your game, and in order to do that, a lot of things have to continue to, evolve and grow. And because of your tenure, you've seen a lot of that. But one in particular that I'd love to have you elaborate a little bit more about the strategic importance of the harbor deepening project and what that involved, and how important that is.
I'm happy to. It's really a fantastic project for us to celebrate here in South Carolina. We were able to achieve a 52-foot harbor, basically an additional 7 feet of depth in our harbor, for a project that really was considered the poster child for deepening projects when it was moving through. It took about 4 years for permitting, which was fast. We can get into a long conversation about whether 4 years is fast, but for a deepening project, it was fast at the time. And then we moved through all of the authorizing by Congress. We achieved our funding and then constructed all within 11 years. So a
Wow.
really fast moving project for a big public works project that involves all levels of government, federal, state, and local, and all levels of regulatory review. And what it really does for us currently, as the deepest harbor on the U.S. East Coast, is it allows for ships to fully utilize their depth coming into the United States in first in calls. And then also you can fully load exports out of here. Imports always being lighter than exports, particularly exports that come out of the Southeast.
Yep.
You get kind of found money as an ocean carrier when you have a deep harbor like this. And again, stressing the importance of exporting in our region, we needed a deep harbor here for those exports so that ocean carriers could take full advantage.
I think that's great. And, it's still fascinating to me, Barbara, because I've been doing this for a long time. So I understand, depths and things like that and the reasons why. But, we're trying to, as part of our podcast, attract some of the next generation of people coming into the industry. So can you just like real quick tell us, you kind of told us why that's important, but a lot of people don't understand the draft of these container ships that come in there when they're coming in or going out loaded. So maybe just add a little piece on that.
Yeah, Barb, you
Sure.
didn't know we were going to ask you to be a professor. Put your professor hat on and
Let me
teach
Yeah.
put my
teach
professor
teach
hat
our
on
listeners.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
got to talk to you about this. So, first of all, it's important to realize that these ships, when they're coming in and out of a harbor, are in a designated area. So we call that designated area the channel. And it's really the channel itself that that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the port and others as local users of that channel, that's what we concentrate on deepening and maintaining. So just to put it in perspective, a fully loaded 10,000, 12,000 TEU vessel could easily draw about 50 feet of water. So inside that channel, it's drawing about 50 feet of water when it's coming in. So our port is maintained at 54 feet. Usually there's a 2-depth overcut, 2 foot of depth overcut on what you're authorized for. So from that perspective, I'm a small person. I'd love to be taller, so I wear high heels. But there is less than my height between the bottom of that ship, if it's coming in at 50 feet, and the bottom of that harbor. So hopefully that puts it in perspective. You know, what people see above the water is dwarfed by what is underneath the water. So you could see 11 or 10 boxes stacked on the top of the ship or on the deck of the ship. If you're in your recreational boat, hopefully nowhere near the boat, the ship as it's transiting. But then there is this full set of motion going on underneath, just like an iceberg. And as that ship is moving through the harbor, there's less than my height between the bottom and the bottom of the channel.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation. And in that, you gave Higgins a great opportunity to make fun of me and how short I am as well. And he didn't take it. I saw it look on his face, but he started to jump in and make fun of my height as well.
See, Kevin, I can communicate mine with heels.
See, and I don't have heels to help me. So at least not that I'll admit to.
Yeah.
Higgins, we're giving you plenty of time to jump in here.
I know. I am biting. I'm internally biting my tongue because he is walking right into it all the time. So he said he made the heels comment himself. I wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, you can edit that out, right?
Yeah.
Let's hope not.
So Barbara, talk a little bit about the development of the inland ports as well, like Greer and Dillon, and how that's enhanced supply chain efficiency and just overall businesses in South Carolina.
So, you know, it's very important for a port to have a holistic picture of what it takes to be successful. And it's really incumbent on us to deliver that vision to everyone in our state. And so, you know, when we talk about being a port that is ready for the future, you have to develop terminal capacity in and around your harbor. You have to have a very capable harbor. You have to have the right equipment. You have to have a healthy maritime community that supports you. But then you have to have inland infrastructure, whether that's interstates and roads. You might need a barge service. But then what we have been able to successfully develop here in South Carolina are 2 inland ports. And you may say, well, is that on a river? Well, no, it's not. It's on our Class 1 railroads, intermodal lines. And so we have 2 inland ports, one on each of our Class 1 railroads. The Norfolk Southern Inland Port sits in Greer, South Carolina. And then the CSX Inland Port for us sits in Dillon, South Carolina. So in Greer, which is, as I talked to you about the economic impact of the port on our state, it's in the upstate, and that upstate region represents greater than half of our economic output here in South Carolina. So Greer sits in a very sophisticated population center base, as well as automotive sector and other advanced manufacturing base for our state. And it is wildly successful. It's 11 plus years old now. Within 10 years, we knew we already needed to expand again. And we just completed an expansion project that generates now for us the capability of more than 300,000 rail lifts in a year. We think we'll crest 200,000 rail lifts this fiscal year in Greer. And just for comparison's sake, because numbers really don't mean anything unless you know what success looks like. Success for an inland port would be 40 or 50,000 rail lifts in 1 year. So we're doing 4 times that many in Greer, South Carolina. And then in Dillon, South Carolina on the CSX line, we're right there on the border between North and South Carolina. We have a great import distribution center there, Harbor Freight Tools, which has more than 3 million square feet under roof.
Wow.
We take advantage of those import empty boxes, and we service that North Carolina and South Carolina region of mainly forest products or food stuff, or other exporting goods, and we send those back to Charleston for exports from there. So really a different concentration of paper products, timber products, and then beans, soybeans, other products that go out, but more seasonal. So that volume is a little bit harder to generate because it's not annual like what you see in Greer. But it had in our fiscal 24 greater than 40,000 rail lifts. So just
Wow.
when you look at what that inland port does, it takes the reach of your port that extra 200 miles inland, which for us in Greer puts us in within 2 days of 72% of the U.S. population. So it just really expands your hinterland, increases your reach, and puts you very close to more population centers. So it's a very efficient, environmentally beneficial way, rail is, to move more cargo. And then it allows for trucks to take advantage of relay networks. Whether they're coming from further away with an export, they don't have to come all the way to the port to do that. It's just really, I think, the future for ports. It's just like the airport. You can't keep building right next to the terminal for parking. You've got to find efficient ways to bring your airport passengers from further away, lots further away, and they hop on a bus, or they're willing to walk further to get to that airport terminal. That's what we've got to think about for containers, is not everything has to be right at the port, because ports are right on the water, beautiful places, and scarce land.
Yep. No, I love that. Such a great strategy.
Yeah, and Barbara, you've mentioned quite a few times, especially just now with Dillon and Greer in particular, just the amount of growth in the last few years, in the last decade. How do you balance that with an environment? I know there's a big commitment from the South Carolina ports, commitment to environmental stewardship and sustainable practices. How do you balance that substantial amount of growth in such a short period of time with that environmental responsibility?
Well, that is a journey, not a destination. And you've got to have open, transparent dialogue with your communities. I always tell folks around here, you might not like what I'm going to tell you, but it's going to be open and honest. So, as long as you keep the dialogue going with your local communities and you have the emotional intelligence to not put more on people than they're willing to accept, and then you have to have that relatable way to say, this is why it's important. These are the jobs we generate. This is why you should become invested in the type of infrastructure that ports can create in your area. It's a we're in a beautiful place, and we have to accept that responsibility here in Charleston. Greer is a beautiful growing place. We have to accept that responsibility. Dillon as well. It is ripe for additional development, and we have to make sure that we bring to the communities what they want. But it's our job. It's our dual mission. Not only here are we to move maritime commerce, but we are to generate economic development for our state. It's the benefit of being a state port. It's the benefit of being an operating port. And it really is what is so motivating for us to be successful, I think, is having that dual mission. So, kind of back to bring it back home to your original question is, how do you do the balance? Well, again, it's like, I might know how to operate a crane, but I'm not the best at it. We have environmental groups that are very successful here in South Carolina. Sometimes we're on the opposite sides of things, but sometimes if we all just remember what people do well and we use them as resources, our environmental and sustainable groups have been very great resources for us as we have helped them achieve the missions that they'd like to achieve, whether it's land conservation or recreation of certain salt marsh or freshwater marsh. If we listen to their ideas, they're more apt to help us accomplish our projects. And so that too creates a good balance for us. And I always say a port that operates invisibly in their community is winning.
That's good. That's good.
I love that. And you guys have the ability, Barbara, like and I don't know where you stand now, and if it's not something that we should talk about it, we can take it out. But I mean, you guys have the ability as your port to do some things that are really innovative and creative in concert. Let's just take chassis, for example. You guys, a couple of years ago, you guys, started providing your customers your own chassis. And so where do you guys stand with that? And how's the new SACP, helping you guys? Is it providing additional value to your customers?
So, and this is perfectly fine to keep in. So I'll start my answer in just a second. We're extremely proud of our chassis pool. This was an asset that helped us recover from congestion during the pandemic much quicker than other places. We had brand new assets we could deploy in longer term situations for customers who were just trying to figure out how to survive during the pandemic, whether that was the exporter waiting on a ship to get in and not roll their cargo and actually take it
Mm-hmm.
foreign versus just prioritizing the need for more empties, or whether it was an importer who had a full warehouse and had to keep the box on the chassis as a mobile warehouse for a little while. Those assets were invaluable to us for the first 2 years of our chassis pool. And we sit today with a pool of about 10,000 plus assets. As we were able to come out of the pandemic and go into more normal operations, we were right sizing the pool to reflect days in use, what
Yep.
was utilization for the area, and it has just been wildly successful. We have two manufacturers that have provided the majority of our new assets, and we're still getting the rest of an order in for our latest order of new chassis, and we'll keep the age of our chassis very young. Most ideas in our industry aren't new. We were
Yep.
able to emulate the best parts of Virginia's chassis pool.
Yep.
We moved forward and implemented our own chassis pool, and it's been great. We don't have any interaction with SACP 3.0 any longer. We don't have interoperability with their pool, but that has not been a hindrance for any of our users. And certainly our chassis are going well beyond South Carolina borders,
Sure.
but we're able to track those, and they're just in great shape. In the Southeast where we're running heavy loads and in warm temperatures, we needed radial tires. We needed anti-lock brakes. We needed
Yep.
LED lights, and we needed GPS tracking equipment so that we could have all of the best telematics available about the pool so that it could be successful and right-sized and stay in the black for us.
Yeah. Well, I love that. It just is, shows the creative and the creativity and the mission to serve the end user and not just take a position that you guys are, just terminal operations and port operations. It's actually, to me, it was taking a concern and in your customer supply chain. So to be well committed, I'm glad to hear that things are going well.
Thank you. You have to be solutions oriented in this industry, and there's no greater highlight of that than what kind of happened in the pandemic when we all started caring simply for our self-interest, and somebody had to step back and say, how can we care for the health of the industry
Yeah.
itself? And inland ports helped with that. Chassis availability helped with that. And then I have to point out that the support of our board, we have a board of directors that guides our investments and our strategy. And then the support of our state, as the state port of South Carolina, they make significant investments that help us be successful. They remind us every day, because they are the constituents of these members of our General Assembly, that we have to be customer focused,
Yeah.
that we have to stay at the top of our game. And then our congressional delegation, and our governor, we're kind of all in on the success of our port, if you want to use a poker analogy. And, South Carolina's doing it well, and I'm just glad to be a part of that team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right
So,
on. Thank you.
yeah. So Barbara, with that kind of gets me to like, where do you see the key trends shaping the future of global logistics, and specifically, what role do you see the South Carolina ports playing, in that over the next decade or so?
No, well, I'll go to that second part of the question first, because that's a softball straight down the middle. But in general, trends in our industry, I've certainly not as experienced as others in our industry. But what I've learned is everything comes back around. About every 4 years, whatever's in is in, and then it's out, and then it's back. And it really only depends on what I think is the health of the drivers of our business, which are our ocean carriers. And so, if they're very healthy in their revenues and in their businesses, they tend to lean towards end-to-end solutions. And when they run into challenges, they pull back to, kind of the base of their operations, and that's really vessel operations. So trends are fleeting in our industry, but they're common. So the same ones come and go. But in general, right now, what I believe to be very key trends that you hear our ocean carriers, who are our customers, talking about, it's reliability in schedule, in performance, it's cost competitiveness, it's productivity, it's safety, and it's customer service. And we echo those very same values here at South Carolina Ports. And so we think that our ability to be adaptable and flexible as an operating port, to be customer focused and driven, to help the same customer that we have, whether it's the shippers for us or the shippers to the ocean carrier, we're a part of that solution. We don't stay hands off and just say, oh, we just moved the box. We don't do that. We have an entire sales force and commercial team that is dedicated to customer success. And then really from our infrastructure planning perspective, we have a pathway that is in place to 10 million TEUs of capacity on the deepest harbor on the U.S. East Coast. So we see our position as strong as the number 8 container port in the country, and we are only going to be stronger as the years go by.
Great answer. Love that.
Yeah. So Barbara, I definitely see your journey as a trailblazer in the industry. And based on that, what kind of advice would you give aspiring leaders aiming to make an impact in port operations or global logistics?
It depends on who I'm talking to, really. Of late, if I'm talking to women in supply chain, I say get at the big table. Just be a supply chain expert. Don't separate yourself. You are as capable, if not more. I'm so proud of our industry for continuing to drive young people to us. I would tell our industry, focus beyond your walls because of the interdependency of the success of our industry. It matters how a motor carrier feels on our terminal. Their experience and their experience that they share with others in their industry drives people to continue want to be a motor carrier. That's part of my job too.
Yeah.
As a leader in this industry is we have to protect the health of everyone that supports us. So I tell them always look beyond your walls, be a team player, take full advantage of the spotlight that is on our industry supply chain. It is a C-suite job. Don't ever devalue it. It is the impacts of great decisions and poor decisions are easily noticed in results now of companies. I tell people take intelligent risks, stand out. It's okay. Even if you fail, stand out. And I think, the most important advice I ever received was learn how to take bad news. Because if you can't, and you react the same way to running out of paper clips as you do having, a hurricane approaching, people aren't going to talk to you anymore.
Yeah.
When you become an isolated leader, you're not a leader at all. You're just filling a desk. So, I think all of those things are important. And if I can leave you with one thought, it's one that I have pretty much at least once a day. And it is a quote that I never lose. I either win or I learn. And I think that if you can keep that in mind as a leader, you can instill that into those around you so that they're not afraid to lose. First of all, there's a lot to be learned from that. And then wins are how you define them in your own mind and how your team defines them with you.
I love that. Such great advice.
That is great advice. I'm the listeners need to really digest that and rewind and go back and listen to that a couple of times and let that just kind of marinate in that, because that's some phenomenal advice. Listening
100%.
to you give
Nelson
that.
Mandela, I'll give him
That's
credit.
great. Yeah. All right, Barbara. So as we start wrapping up a little bit, I want to get into some of the fun stuff for sure. So if a container coming through Charleston right now could tell a story, what's the wildest or most inspiring journey that you've seen?
Geez.
Higgins looking at me like, what?
Yeah, that's a great
Oh,
question.
you know what? So there's I won't name specific companies.
Oh, come on.
I'll tell you a story. Well, okay, if you want me to, but so there was a home improvement store.
Okay.
Who was working diligently to help those who had lost power from one of our tropical events.
Okay.
And our industry was challenged towards the end of a master contract last year. And there was an imminent work stoppage. And what I will tell you is that container that was full of useful, almost urgent need for a family in North Carolina. Even though it was strained, even though it was 11:45 on September 30th, everyone in this port put their arms around that container. They got it off the vessel. They shepherded it out the gate. And so within 2 days, that family in North Carolina had power.
Wow.
And so I think if you are a container coming through our port, you're not just a box. You're a good that is ultimately going to belong to someone. And we're going to make sure that that container is treated with care. It is supported by people who have had generational positive impact on our waterfront. And it is going to be lifted up by people who understand the importance of their job and the importance of supply chain and the impact, the positive impact of what we do every day.
Wow.
Okay, Higgins, I'm sending all my cargo through Charleston. Done.
I just love the compassionate care, focus on all of that. So that's such an incredible story.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that.
I would love to take credit, but I didn't. And that
Yeah.
is a story that was supported by everyone from our harbor pilots to our tug pilots to our ocean carrier themselves, to the stevedore on the docks, to the port employee, the international longshoreman, and the motor carrier, and then ultimately the customer. So that's the kind of effort we try to put forward every day for every box.
I love that.
That's amazing. Amazing story. Thanks for sharing that. All
Absolutely.
right. So Higgins and I are big music lovers. I don't know how much of a music lover you are, but if we caught you riding around the terminal or prepping for a big day, what's on your go-to playlist? Something.
Oh my gosh.
Is it something motivational? Is it mellow? Let us learn a little bit what kind of music style you like, Barbara.
Well, I am a huge Ariana Grande fan.
Okay. All right.
I like country music.
Okay.
So you could find some Chris Stapleton on my playlist.
Yes.
You could definitely find some Frank Sinatra on my playlist. You've probably got a little Outcast every once in a while.
Wow.
That's a great mix. Yeah.
It is.
You could, I think the folks around here would absolutely share with you that there are times when I've had to figure out I have some speakers that go to the outdoor spaces of our fourth floor where I get to sit, and you can kind of see the fourth floor behind me. And I never know whether there's anybody out there having lunch, or if maybe in the boardroom you might could hear those speakers and you're in a meeting. And sometimes when I'm playing my music, I have to make sure that certain speakers are turned off, because every once in a while you could get a little maybe inappropriate language coming out of my music selection. So I have to make sure that the speakers are off at times.
I love that. I love that.
That's great. Well, Barbara, really thinks we could go on, and we'll definitely have to have you back because I think we could talk about just your career, your journey, your inspirational approach to leadership, all of that. But thank you for joining us today, sharing not just your deep industry knowledge, but your bold vision for what ports and people can achieve when we think big and lead with purpose. From deepening harbors to deepening partnerships, it's clear South Carolina Ports isn't just keeping peace and pace, it's setting the pace. So to our listeners, if you took away one thing from today's conversation, let it be this: ports aren't just where goods move. They're where economies grow, communities connect, and innovations come to life. And leaders like Barbara are proving every day that the future of logistics isn't just about containers and cranes. It's about courage and creativity. So until next time, keep it real, keep it global, and keep on moving forward. Thanks so much, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Kev Talks, Real World Global Logistics. If today's discussion inspired you, don't forget to follow, subscribe, rate, and share our podcast.
Remember, every great journey in logistics starts with a single step forward. Let's continue working together to transform the industry.